Okay, everybody, we are getting started here. Sorry for the technical delay. This is Pro Organic Beliefs, our monthly speaker meeting. This month, we have Dawn Dean, who lives down in the Toledo district. She's actually up here visiting some of us in Cayo and seeing a couple of farms and just sharing her information with us. So her title presentation is Gardening in Belize and Growing Vanilla, which she's our vanilla expert, I think, in Belize. And okay, just a couple of ground rules. If everybody would please stay muted, because the presentation is being recorded and we know that it picks up every little sound in the background. So everybody please stay muted. Dawn is very happy to take questions, and you can do it a couple of different ways. Basically, those of you who are there with Dawn, the easiest is just to kind of get her attention, wave your hand, whatever, and ask your question anytime during her presentation. And for those of you on Zoom, why don't you submit your question in the chat option, and you can submit it to everyone. And then I'll let Dawn know, or if she doesn't see it, then I'll let Dawn know that there's a question, and then she can answer that. But she said, just interrupt anytime during the presentation and she'll happily answer the questions. That way she knows she's on the right track. Quick introduction. Belize, if you will go to our facebook.com/organic Belize page for details about Pro Organic, and then for discussion go to Facebook groups Pro Organic Belize. Our organization, if you're interested in finding out, go to pro-organicbelize.org, and Karen has done an incredible job putting that web page together, keeping it up, constantly adding things to it. And one of the things that you can find on there is you go to the speaker section, and all of the Zoom meetings that we've had with speakers in the last couple of years, which has been one every month pretty much, they're all posted on our website. So any of the ones that you missed, you can go and watch those. They're all recorded, as this one will be. And we've had some great speakers from all over Belize. We had one from Taiwan, I think Umida was in California when she did it. So that's the beauty of Zoom and having the opportunity to get people from other places. And we also have a consumer group, and details are on the website about our pesticide-free produce and how you can get on the weekly list for ordering. So, all right, Dawn, I will put up your first slide, and if you can just sort of tell us who you are and what you do, and we will get started. All right. I turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Jenny. Well, you did say this first side was my house, but I just want to tell you that's a little bit misleading. That is the view from my house. I didn't actually live underwater. Okay, I will start. My name is Dawn Dean, and I live in Barranco Village, and I lived for a long time in Colombia Village before I moved to Barranco, which is salient in this conversation because I would say my experience gardening is in several different places, gardening/farming. First, I farmed in Colombia Village, and the soil there is a lot like I'm seeing here in Cayo. It's really nice. It's rich black soil, a lot of it. I mean, clay too, yes, and you get cracks in the ground in dry season, but it's nice soil. You can grow like everything there. Dry season is a little hard because plants can dry up and die in dry season, but basically everything grows there. So I farmed in Colombia for like 16 years, and then I moved to Barranco Village, and I sort of just thought that you put plants in the ground and then they grew. And then I learned in Barranco that it's just like not that easy. So I sort of had like, I don't know, like the easy introduction to agriculture in Colombia when I lived in Colombia Village. So when I moved to Barranco, I lived there for a few months, and then I decided, I really love this village. I want to stay here. And I got permission from the village council to have a piece of lease land. And so I have a 5 acres piece of lease land about a mile out of the village. And that soil is yellowish, and it really doesn't want to grow like anything. Like, to put it in perspective, I've planted 400 bananas there, and today I have 0 bananas. Like, they all die. Like, um, I mean, I planted 100. Like in Colombia, when you plant a banana, you could just throw a sucker on the ground any kind of way, and it's gonna grow. And then, I planted 100 banana. I bought suckers. I planted 100 banana. They died. I said, okay, I'm gonna be serious about that. And I got my kids out there, and we dug holes, and we took all the roots out, and we added dolomite, and we added horse manure, and we planted bananas. And they grow like, like 2 foot tall, and then they get smaller and smaller, and they die. And then we made more bananas, and we made raised garden beds for each and every one. Some of those lasted like 2 years, and they never got like more than shoulder height, and they too died. So uh, previously, my permaculture idea was that you could just like plant lots of bananas for biomass, and that would like enrich the soil with all this extra plant material. Since then, I've decided that doesn't work everywhere. Um, and I planted, when I lived in Columbia Village, I had every plant that I know of in Belize. Like I just love plants, and every single tree that I heard of, I got a plant and I grew it, and I took care of it and it grew. Um, and so I have planted many things on this 5 acres that I was gifted by the community. But what I could say is, well, actually, it was when I started hearing people in the village say, Dawn is a pineapple farmer. I was like, oh, shucks. I guess you're right. I guess pineapple is the only thing that grows there. And so, yeah, now I have like, I don't know, a few thousand pineapple plants. um, but other things also grow on that piece of land. Cashew also grows there. The mango is not flourishing, but also not dying. And then vanilla grows there. So I have roughly an acre that has pineapple and a pond. I got a big pond. I grew tilapia on 1 acre. And then 1 acre is vanilla plants, that all different type of vanilla plants. But I think we'll get to that later in the conversation. So actually the 5 acres is wonderful. It has many wonderful plants, including vanilla and pineapple. And then this other piece of land, in the last 3 years ago, I bought a piece of land, 2 acres, quite close to where my house is in the village, from Jack Nightingale. And it's very different soil. It's sandy. Well, it's like sandy, loamy clay. Or maybe I should say it's a little hint of clay with heavy sand and nice loam. So everything grows there just slowly. So that's wonderful. And then the reason I put this picture in my yard is because when it rains, I really do live in a wetlands, and that is my yard. And if you see in the front of the picture where you see green plants, that would appear to be dry land, but those are actually the water hyacinth that are in the creeks, because I have 2 creeks in my yard all the time, and the water hyacinth has floated up, but it will float back down. So that's actually the lowest part in the yard where you see green things right there. And the little zinc roof that you see to the left of the picture, that's my kitchen. And the thatch roof you see to the back, that's my daughter's art studio. Yeah, way to the back. That's a wheelbarrow, like in the middle. And then the little square teeny weeny house, that's where the guinea fowl live. So I have very raised garden beds, and you can kind of see fluffs of plants growing out of the but I mean, we're talking like thigh high garden beds. So I put this picture into the slideshow just to say I have experience growing in nice soil that's hilly in Colombia, clay soil that doesn't want to grow anything in Barranco, sandy soil, and here in the wetlands area, I also have done plants.
I think you have a dry season.
Yeah, we have a dry season, but even in dry season, there are still fish swimming in the creek in my yard. So this is a house lot. It's like 59 by 95, a house lot. Yeah, but it's 1/3 water. But it's wonderful. I think we can go to the next slide. Or is that my job? Do I go to the next slide?
No, she does.
Okay.
I do.
Okay. Yes. Okay. These are my lovely children, Esperanza and Zephyr. um, and we do, in fact, actually grow things and produce things. So this is just a picture of them like last year with banana and pineapple. And we can go to the next slide.
You do grow
Also.
bananas.
Yeah. Okay. On the sandy piece of land, that grows bananas. Yes.
Okay.
With the 5 acres with clay, no bananas. I tried again. Okay. So there's 2 slides here, and I put them in because I thought they were important. This is a picture of a sorrel plant on my sandy farm. This sorrel plant, I got the seed from the exact same place I got the seed for the sorrel plant in the next picture. But I just want you to see that this sorrel plant has 1, 2, 3, 4 of the flowers. Now we can go and we can look at the next one, which is grown in a garden bed. Next slide. There.
Wow.
Okay, so I tried taking pictures at different times in the day. I took these 2 pictures of sorrel this week, specifically for this presentation. But this is a raised garden bed in the middle of the area that you saw when it was flooded in the first picture. And there are hundreds and hundreds of the flowers on this plant. So I would say the most important thing that I have learned about gardening is it's the soil. Just do everything you can to make good soil. And I think it's worth pointing out here too that I saw a lot of emails that went back and forth before I came here and did this presentation. And I think the most stressing thing that I read in these emails was someone, I don't remember who, used the phrase gardening guru. And I just want to say that is not me. I'm really sorry if you thought you got a gardening guru this weekend. I am only someone who really loves plants and has planted a lot of plants, but many of those plants have also died. And I am not someone who, I mean, I think I probably tried growing broccoli like, I don't know, 20 years ago, but I mean, I just plant what's easy. I eat a lot of chaya, I eat a lot of callaloo. My yard is swampy, so kangkong grows superbly easy in my swampy yard. Unlimited kangkong. I plant things, and if they die, I just don't plant them anymore. I just plant the things that are easy to grow and that I like to eat. And if I want broccoli, I go buy it at market. So, but I also have never been particularly successful with making compost in a composting bin and then applying it to my plants. I dream of being successful in that way. But what is actually more realistic for what I do, the raised garden beds that this sorrel is growing in, I make a wooden frame box or rocks, concrete blocks, zinc, whatever, a box, and then fill it with everything, like big logs. We had to cut a part off a giant mango tree this year, so I put the giant mango logs in the bottom of garden beds, and then like any kind of trash, I like coconut leaves that I see fall on the road near my house, I drag them home and I put them in the garden bed. I just fill it and fill it and fill it and fill it. And I have a dear friend who has a horse pasture, so she likes to joke that she gives me crap for my birthday. So every year she lets me take goodness from her horse pasture and deliver it to my garden beds by my house, which is why the sorrel looks so much nicer there. I've raised sheep before. I think sheep are really, really, really wonderful as long as you can keep them out of the garden. They're a nice animal to take care of. I've raised them in village situations and made limited disappointments to my neighbors with their bad behavior. But finally my sheep were so bad in the village, I had to get rid of them. But sheep are nice for manure, easy to collect. It's not like picking up cow manure, for example. It's much drier, and you can pick it up and put it in your garden easily. But my advice to anyone on gardening would kind of be two things. Just focus on making the soil good and grow what wants to grow. So I put lots of seeds, lots of plants. Many die, but many also live. And that's all the advice I really have. I mean, but I do have experience growing lots of plants. So if you would like to ask any questions about any particular plants, you could.
It's weird that you mentioned that you have a lot of in your yard. It started with a K.
Kang Kong.
What is that? I've never heard of it.
It's family to sweet potato.
Ah,
It's got it looks a lot like a sweet potato, but it's a shinier green and the leaves look a bit pointier. But you eat the tips of the vines. They're hollow like tubes. It's very delicious. You can also eat it raw.
okay. Thank you.
But I see some people have garden beds and it looks very small. If you have a swampy area, that's where it wants to grow.
Yeah. I'm on a river, so I could probably go
river bank.
down by the riverbank. But
Yeah.
I'm pretty high up from the river. But that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a great plant for that. When the
Oh,
Malaysians came and did logging in Toledo, like I don't know, 20 years ago, they grew a lot of it, and that's where I first was introduced to the plant.
yeah, it's interesting because I think that it's important that we all learn about local plants that are easy to grow here, that don't need a lot of pesticides or fertilizer.
Mhm.
So what you experienced, I think, is something that we all have to be
Mhm.
willing to experience. But I just noticed you have loofah here. I'm growing loofah now and I'm getting these great big sponges.
Yeah.
But I understand you can eat them when they're small. Is that true?
Yeah, I've eaten a lot of them, but I'm not crazy about how they
Okay.
taste.
Yeah, I can't imagine that they would taste very good. These
But they're
sponges.
soft. They're like I don't know, like a zucchini cucumber, but
Ah,
I don't know. They taste like how they smell when they're big.
okay.
Mm.
Good. Excellent. And there's certain beans that are good for the soil to grow, just like the jack beans.
Yeah, jack beans.
Do you have jack beans? Do you grow jack beans?
I have grown jack beans. I have some right now, and they're really good for getting rid of wee wees.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes the wee wee nest is too big. I've tried with like
What about
many.
flying potato? I've never heard of that one.
It's a plant. I think it dies every year in about October, and the flying potatoes, you have to save them and plant them at the beginning of rainy season.
Are they real? Do they look like real potatoes?
Well, similar.
And they taste like
Yeah, you could use them in the ways that you use potatoes. Like you could
Okay.
make mashed potato, you could make baked potato. If you boil them, you can, the skin is a bit tougher. So if you were to boil them and cut them in half, you can pull the skin off almost whole in them.
What's the difference between the culantro and the cilantro?
The flavor, not much, but
Not
yeah,
much
they're
difference in the
completely
flavor.
different plants.
Culantro is like a bitter,
More bitter?
almost bitter. And they're broadleaf.
Yeah, they
Not
look different,
Mhm,
very
mhm.
but they smell the same.
Yeah, yeah. So I see Jenny has brought up the next slide, which is of a pitaya plant. And the reason I chose this picture is because I'm trying to show the pitaya how it's growing. And then if you see behind it, there are posts, vertical posts with a whole bunch of horizontal logs laying in it. So it turns out pitaya grows really well on this sandy piece of land that I just got, like super duper well. So I have I'm calling them islands, and in this picture, they're not even complete, but I put 4 posts. I got 4 7-foot long posts and put them 3 foot in the ground, 4 foot out of the ground in a 4-foot square, and then more 7-foot posts. And after this picture was taken, and make what I would call a tic-tac-toe sign, but is like a hashtag sign on top of said posts, so that the pitaya, like the posts, kind of brace each other. And that's what I have the pitaya growing on, because when I got this new piece of land, it was bush. So I took down a lot of trees that I didn't think were going to be useful in the long term. And then, you know, you have chainsaw down branches everywhere. So because pitaya loves sawdust and rotten wood and sandy areas, it seemed like a really good plan. So I haven't been trying this for a long time, but to me, it's working really well so far, that I just put pitaya on all four corner posts and then let it grow up. So it's like a unit. Because I see a lot of times people grow pitaya in long rows, and I'm not a row kind of person myself. So the island thing kind of fit with it better. And there's two more pictures if you want to go through those kind of quickly, Ginny, and show what the pitaya is looking like also.
I like your comment about how seeds from papaya. How do I save seeds from papaya? You say, don't bother.
Yeah. Right. So in this picture is just four more posts that you can see, hardwood posts surrounding a big pile of rotten wood, and then some waha leaf that grew wild in the foreground. And let us see the last picture of it. If you could go to the next screen. Can we see? Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, that's in the foreground. That's the wheelbarrow, and I'm planting aloe plants that my friend gave me. But in the background is a really clean shot of what the pitaya trellises look like. Except for, like I'm saying, at this point they did not have their tic-tac-toe on top of them. But the pitayas are growing really super well in these
Are
conditions.
they growing on top of the
They-
wood or just up the
They're
stake?
supposed to be growing up the stakes. Sometimes I turn my eye for like a week and they climb on the logs, but then I just pry them off and I
Mhm.
put them where they're supposed to be, and I tie them with a vine to the post where I want them to be. Yeah.
So I have mine are growing up a tree, but they don't seem to be doing that well. And I'm noticing here that they need a lot of sun.
That's everything that I have read about them and watched on YouTube says that they want like 12 hours a day of sun.
So they're not getting that if they're on a tree.
Yeah.
Leaves
Not
are-
only that, but Richard, the guy that Mr. Pataya said that it keeps going up till it hunts for something going this way. It'll go all the way to the top of your tree unless you have something going this way. And then it'll go that way, and then it'll produce.
To go look at them and see what we can do.
All right. I think you can go to the next slide now, please.
The red pitayas are yellow.
Well, I believe they're red, but they haven't started to bear yet.
Okay, let us know.
Yeah. They were only planted in the last year. Okay, this is my latest idea, and this is just an idea. This is just my project that I'm working on. It's a dome that I made out of rebar. So, I mean, I don't have a finished product to show you. Although, I mean, if anybody wants to show up in Barranco and come look at plants with me, that would be awesome. But this is my latest idea for building a dome for loofah. And the loofah is not covering it yet, because my main business is I have a soap business. So I am leaning more and more towards growing more of the ingredients for the soap. But loofah, I mean, you bathe with it, you bathe with soap, so they're a natural combo. And then sometimes I put cut pieces of loofah in the soap. So
Do you make neem soap?
I have made neem soap, but I have only planted neem on my clay piece of land where they died. So I don't have enough neem to make
The savings
neem
of
soap.
seeds.
I would love that. Yeah, because like I'm saying, everything grows on my new piece of land that I got just during pandemic. I got this new piece of land. Everything can grow there, just slowly, but I can give it.
Yeah, they're
Fertilizer.
amazing. How about soap nuts? Do you grow soap nuts?
I had a tree. I planted it. It died, but I'm aware of them.
But you
have
the baby ones now.
Yeah, I have baby ones in the nursery still.
Oh,
yes,
good.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Soap
yes.
nuts, The first year they grow very slowly and then all of a sudden, boom. Oh, that's a neem, sorry.
Oh.
Soap nuts can be huge.
Yeah, I've seen huge trees for them, but
I use
Yeah, I
soap
don't have-
nuts for washing my clothes.
awesome. I've heard that they
Sorry.
make clothes whiter. Right. Yeah. So this slide was just an idea I have, and the next slide is
What are you gonna do with it?
plant loofah on it,
Oh,
so that
okay.
it could
Cool.
it could
Yeah.
be a covered area with loofah inside. And then this is my friend Nicole, and I'm going to copy her idea, which is why she's in here. This is not my
Is
farm
that
at all.
Nicole Anduin?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Tell her to send an email address.
All right. But she did this thing last year that was so amazing that I figure if you guys want to know about gardening, I can just tell you what I've been inspired by. But she has these black containers that you can see and filled them with, she said, not even that special of dirt, but they're definitely raised containers, and then small tomatoes on stakes underneath that clear plastic roof, and they produced incredible amounts of tomatoes.
Cool.
Like this bag she has is like, I don't know, like 4 plants. Like it's incredible amounts of tomatoes every single day. I think also I was really discouraged. I bought tomatoes last week at market and they tasted like nothing. Like, but these tomatoes that she was growing were just so super delicious and so super prolific and
She had
not
the
much
plastic
space.
roof?
Yeah, a plastic roof over everything.
And no sides.
No sides to it.
Yeah,
No,
that's
just the
what-
plastic roof.
You need the air.
Ask her to save the seeds
Yeah, I definitely want to get
because it
seeds
must
from
be a
her.
good variety.
Yeah, she's a big
And
big
good
gardener.
soil.
I was saying, what is this? Do you have pure compost in here? She was
Soil.
like, no, that's just some dirt. That's nothing special. So I
Uh-huh.
don't know, but
Must have been good dirt.
yeah, must have been good
Mhm.
dirt too. But
Good
I
soil,
was
good
so
fruit.
inspired. I am definitely doing that this dry season, and I thought maybe y'all wanted to see the picture I took of her last year doing it because it was prolific. All right.
Try that.
I think in the next picture we go to vanilla. So to my mind, there's like 2 sections that we're talking about today. One is gardening and one is vanilla. So if anybody wants to bring up anything related to gardening now, you could, or you could wait till later when we're talking about vanilla and do it then, but preferably now.
Dawn, one participant asked if you could speak a little bit louder,
Oh boy.
if possible.
Okay. There we go. It's closer now. Hopefully that's going to be louder. And I can try to talk louder.
Do it.
All right. So now anybody want to say anything about gardening? Anything more? Comments? Corrections?
Your philosophy on growing what wants to grow, kind of,
Mhm,
I've heard before.
mhm.
Greg Shropshire said the same thing.
Mm.
If it doesn't want to grow there, fine. I'll get something that does grow there.
Right attitude.
Yeah.
Otherwise you just get
Yeah.
frustrated.
I
Yeah.
think moringa would like sandy soil.
I think
You grow moringa?
I did when I lived in Colombia, but yeah, I would like to try that.
I think it like sandy soil.
Yeah, I would like that.
how about hemp?
I haven't tried growing it. No.
Yeah, well, there's not too many people trying it anymore because they just ruled that you can't do anything with hemp in this country. However, we did have some growers that were doing wonderful things with hemp. They're apparently
It's too bad.
industrial hemp is very, very, if you want to make good soil. They used it all around Chernobyl. They used it in Italy where the steel mills were spewing out chemicals, and it's a great remediation.
Yeah, I've heard great things about hemp too, but it's not legal. I'm not going to try
Well,
to grow it
I
right
think
now.
the reason it's not, that the churches were upset about it is because they lumped the two together.
Yeah.
And really, they should have been looked at totally separate. Like one should be looked at like tomatoes. I mean, why would you need any kind of a permit to grow tomatoes? Industrial hemp is not something that you can use recreationally. So they're very different plants, and they seem to lump them together. And I think that was a mistake. But let's go to the other niche crop,
All right, on to vanilla.
vanilla.
All right. Vanilla is probably my favorite plant. Um, this is a picture on the farm that I have up the road that I'm saying has clay soil. And vanilla doesn't really grow into the soil. It grows more on top of the soil and under the mulch. So, and vanilla was already growing wild in this area uh, before I even got this land and cleared it and started to use it. But I I think Belize would do well to grow more vanilla, like you're saying about the hemp. It's a good crop. I think yeah, vanilla would be a really good crop for Belizeans to grow more of, and then having an amount, then we could have an industry of it. We could use it like a commodity. We could have a factory produce um, vanilla extract, vanilla car fresheners, whatever it would be, right?
Huge market, international market.
And in terms of, I mean, it's not something that even wants to have any kind of artificial fertilizers. Like that's not the norm in vanilla cultivation anywhere to use artificial fertilizers. And we here are in the rainforest, and vanilla wants to grow in the shade. So it growing vanilla is a nice way to preserve the ovistory and preserve the big trees that are in an area. So in that way, it's a plant that promotes conservation and preservation of an area, anyways. Um, Vanilla. Okay, briefly, vanilla is a vining orchid. I'm pretty sure it's the only orchid that you can eat something from, or that you would want to eat something from. And it grows wild in lots of places in Belize, but once an area is disturbed, the vanilla is gone, because vanilla is not something that you grow from a seed. It's something that grows from a cutting. So if you were, and it loves shade. So if you were to go through and clear cut an acre, certain plants would pop back up. Like you would see trumpet trees, jackass bitters come up, but you won't see the vanilla come up because it it's been burnt by the sun. It's dead. So once you clear an area, your vanilla there is gone.
Grows up trees, right?
Yes.
I visited a vanilla plantation in Mexico,
Mhm.
and they were growing vanilla in this huge, massive orange grove.
Yeah.
They didn't care about the oranges. The oranges
Yeah.
just fell down and rotted. But
Yeah.
they were just growing vanilla.
Yeah.
Tons
Yeah,
of it.
I've heard about that too. Um, I think you would have to not care about the oranges, like you're saying, to
Yeah.
grow the vanilla on the orange trees. And I had the idea many years ago that I would grow vanilla on cacao trees. That's not actually a good idea, because the cacao pods are so close on the tree that the vanilla
Right.
will interfere with them. But citrus is a really hard, strong wood, so I could see even if the tree died, it would support vanilla for years afterwards. And it's a tree that grows out, so there's many things for the vanilla to hook on. But okay, briefly, a description of vanilla. Um, it's a vining orchid. It likes to grow up trees. It likes shade, but it will not turn sideways like the pitaya if it sees a side branch. It just wants to grow straight up, straight up, straight up. And then it will not throw any flowers. And you need flowers to make vanilla beans, obviously. You'll have a lovely, healthy vine growing straight up your tree, but you won't have any vanilla to eat. So the vanilla wants two things to make it produce. It wants, first of all, it wants to have a burst of sunshine in dry season, which it sort of does naturally when you see like dry season, like the leaves get smaller. So more sun is going to come through the same leaves. Also, it has to tip. Tipping is when it grows up the tree and then it falls down. And then the vine like continues and it curves back up. That's a vanilla vine tipping. That's a term that's used in the vanilla industry, tipping. So if your vine grows up, it's happy and healthy and it doesn't need to have children. But if your vine feels under stress and it's like hanging down and it's getting sunshine, then the vanilla vine feels a little bit of stress. And that's when it's like, oh, I should probably have kids for the next generation. It throws flowers, then you have vanilla plants. So in a vanilla plantation, you want to, maybe that's me imagining the plants a bit more like humans than they are, but that's the way I understand what they're doing, is they're waiting till they're stressed and they're feel maybe like they're at a time when they need to make the next generation grow. So to grow vanilla vines, you need to put them in a situation where you can coppice the trees above them or prune away the shade so that you're increasing the sunshine right about this time of year, because they naturally want to flower like February. Planifolia, vanilla planifolia I'm speaking about right now, which is like the official species of commerce, the most common vanilla planifolia. But it naturally wants to flower like February, March, April, May. But if you have tipped it, so the plant, any time of the year you can tip it. The plant is growing down, it's growing up. And so it has that trigger already happening. But right like after Christmas, this time of year, like Valentine's Day, you prune off branches around it to bring more sun into it. Then you're like supplementing its natural urge to have flowers this time of year in dry season by giving it more sun. So that with its natural urge to have flowers in dry season and the sun and the tipping, that's how you'll get the most flowers and the most production. So
How long does it take for vanilla to actually produce the vanilla beans?
how long does it take a vanilla to produce the actual vanilla beans? Well, after you planted a cutting, say 36 inches long. Okay, let me walk it through like this. And if I forget, veer me back on course, please. But to plant a vanilla, you would take a cutting, maybe 36 inches long. You cut the leaves off the bottom half of that. And then you find a tree or a tutor. A tutor is the word for whatever plant you're going to have it grow on. And then you would take a machete and chop the ground next to it. So there's nothing growing by the base of this tree. And you lay the leafless bottom half of the vanilla vine on the ground. And then the leafy half of the vanilla vine, you tie to the tree. Tie it with vines that will rot away, or tie it with like old t-shirts that stretch. Do not tie it with something that does not stretch or biodegrade, because then you can go and notice that the tree grew and it like cut your vine in half with the string. So vines, t-shirts, that's my recommendation. So then as the vine's growing and growing up the tree, a Madre de Cacao is a perfect tutor and one of the most popular tutor trees in the world, because you can just endlessly chop the top branches off of it and it will continue growing. Some trees you coppice at chest height and the plant just dies. So you want to plant it on a tree that you can chop the top branches off of, like an erythrina, a gumbo limbo, a Madre de Cacao, a bush tree that loses its leaves, calabash, because calabash loses its leaves naturally this time of year. So that brings sun to the plant. So you wouldn't even have to prune and give more sunlight to the plant. Or if you're planting it, most of my vanilla is like in a bush situation. So other plants are growing up around it and I chop them down to bring in sunlight. Or if, let's say, I want to take down a tree and mill it for lumber, the vanilla plants in the area will flower more that year because the tree has come down and increased the sunlight near those vanilla plants. So if you planted the vine, it's growing up the tree, give it maybe a year and a half till it's high enough that you can even tip it, which you could just pull it gently off the tree, make it hang, and then it'll grow up maybe 2 years, 3 years, let's say, after planting it. Then it has a flower in dry season. And that flower needs to be hand pollinated because like 1 out of 10 approximately vanilla flowers in the wild something will pollinate them. There's a little shiny black euglossine bee. Not, I mean, it's small in terms of a pollinator, but large in terms of a bee. But there's a black bee that looks almost iridescent blue green on the outside. That's a pollinator of it. Hummingbirds pollinate it. I think ants pollinate it. But the flower needs to be pollinated, and the flower is only good for one morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you do it? You put the, like a Q-tip on,
I use like a little, like I just take a little teeny weeny twig that I find nearby. A Q-tip would be a bit big, but if you were to look, okay, this is a vanilla flower from the side. There's a little lip that's like this. You're gonna reach in with a stick and pull this lip back and smash the flower. And you can Google it when you get to that stage. There's lots of diagrams
Wow.
online, but you must pollinate it or you will probably not get a vanilla bean, a vanilla fruit from it. So after you pollinate it, then you wait like 9 months and it starts to get yellow on the very bottom tip of it. And that's when you pick it. If you let it get like half yellow, it'll start splitting and opening, and that's not what you want.
And that's where the seeds are.
Yeah, that's where the seeds are
But
inside.
you say it's better to cut it or cut it.
Yeah.
So what do you do with your vanilla then? I mean, how much do you get?
Well, I don't get very much vanilla, and I'll tell you why, which is that I okay. I went to Mexico and I met with people in the Vanilla Growing Association in Veracruz and near Veracruz, and they said they didn't know of any wild vanilla near them. But that's like where vanilla was originally domesticated in this hemisphere. But like I'm saying, if you clear cut an area, the vanilla is gone from there. So we in Belize have sort of a unique situation that we have the right climate for vanilla to grow, and we have enough forests that there is wild vanilla still growing in it. So I have hoped for many years that I would find a vanilla that didn't need so much hand pollination, because that's the most expensive part of growing vanilla. Like when I went to Mexico to learn about vanilla plants, they were telling me that, I mean, their vanilla situation is very regimented. It's not like you're not in the forest. They have rows of trees at an exact spacing, and they all get trimmed at an exact time, and you step on exact trails. So it's very organized. But they were telling me that they can make 90% of their pollination happen in a 2-week period. All right, because they control everything so much that they've controlled the plants to do that. And then they have to get like buses of people from like faraway cities, like buses of people to come and like work there, and they have to set up kitchens and feed people.
Wow.
So they can get hundreds of people pollinating all these vanilla plants. Hugely expensive. It's the most expensive part of their vanilla operations. So if we in Belize seem to have more wild vanilla than almost anywhere else, as far as I can tell, and I would say Barranco area has more wild vanilla than any other area I know of in Belize, then if there is a vanilla in the whole world that doesn't need this hand pollination, that's easier to pollinate on its own, or that the flower lasts for 2 or 3 days or whatever, and if we could find that vanilla here, that would be incredible. That could revolutionize the vanilla industry in the whole world,
Yeah. Do you,
or at least for
do
us.
you know Solucio Chiak? Yeah,
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, I know Salucio.
Yeah, he's very, very much for teaching farmers how to grow it as a niche crop. You know, on a little piece of land that they're not growing other foods.
Yeah.
And he's from, I think he's from my village, or Valley near Valley Peace. And I made a little template for him. He's advertising it. classes, but I
Mhm.
think he taught the classes at Central Farm.
Mhm, mhm.
So I think there's interest, and I think it would be very good to teach some of the women how to grow.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yes, I know Solucio, and I love Solucio's enthusiasm
Yeah,
for
very
growing
enthusiastic.
vanilla. Yes.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think it's ideal for women. I have very, very strong opinions about women's issues. And I think a lot of it, I think a lot of, I mean, to deviate from the real topic of our talk today, I think a lot of the reason why women are in such bad situations in Belize today is because they're disempowered by not having an income.
Right.
And it's really hard to leave an abusive man if you don't have any money. And it's easier, I imagine, never having been an abusive man, it's easier to not get over beating a woman if you know she can't go anywhere anyways
Mhm.
because she doesn't have any money. So I really love vanilla for that because it's something that's in the shade. It's something that's small. I mean, a cornfield, I get it. You can't have a baby on a cornfield. It's because how are you going to carry a little baby and chop a cornfield? But you can have vanilla plants close to your house. You can work on them in the morning. You can work on them in the evening. You can be close enough to your house. You can hear what's going on in the kitchen. Like,
And it seems to be a very nurturing activity, which is
mhm.
more towards the feminine way of doing things.
I would like to believe that men too can be nurturing,
Oh, yeah.
but I feel your point. Yes.
How many times a year do they blossom?
Once,
This one.
once. So
They all at
generically,
the
you could
same
say
time?
they would be blossoming now, starting maybe next month, but yes, now. So generically, I would say vanilla planifolia flowers in early mid dry season and then stays on the vine till beginning of December, and that's when you're going to find it. And then there's a curing process that can also happen with the vanilla beans after they're picked.
So once you harvest the beans,
Mhm.
what happens?
Mhm. That's where it's an
You mean to the
advantage.
beans or the plant?
The beans
Beans,
to
what do you
make the
do?
vanilla.
There's a curing process. And I just remember I didn't quite finish your question, but I'll come back to my production of vanilla. But what happens to it in the curing process is you want it to get hot and die as a plant. So you could either sun it or you could dip it in boiling water, but you want it to get hot and die. You don't want it to get dry. So that's why it's nice if you have a whole vanilla plantation. Then one way it could be typically done, you could put out a cloth with all your green vanilla beans on it and let them sun for 2 hours. And then you wrap them all up and put them like in a cooler, in a box. So they're hot
Mhm.
and they're not going to mold between now and tomorrow. And tomorrow you give them sun and you wrap them up. But you kind of, to hold that heat, you need a bunch of vanilla beans.
Mhm.
And another way I saw they do it in Mexico is they take the vanilla beans, dip them in boiling water, and then sun them, dry them. But the idea is that you want to dry them slowly over months. And then even in some countries, um, I've seen pictures of people where they sit down and they're actually massaging the vanilla beans, like just like bending them, like running it through your fingers, but that helps distribute the oil in the beans and gives it a better flavor. Labor is expensive today. I don't know that anywhere does that today, but I know that that's a way that that is done with vanilla. So it is a curing process. If you only have a few beans, you can simulate that. So what you would do is sun them, heat till they're hot, wrap up your few amount of beans and put them, I don't know, put them in the oven where they're when the oven is off, like just somewhere to set them aside so they stay hot as long as possible. And do it again tomorrow. But they're going to dry faster because you can't get them to dry that slow. You want them to get hot, stay hot. And eventually you'll see they'll be brown, they'll be glossy, they'll smell like vanilla. And when they're dry, but they're still flexible, not brittle dry. Like, I think we in Belize, because we have so much humidity, we have this habit of believing that the drier the better, and we just want to dry. Like, we dry the beans, we dry the peanuts, we dry the rice, and we want them dry, dry, dry. You don't want your vanilla that dry. You want to dry it until it's not wet and it's not green. And then you get something like vodka, like just get the small cheap container of vodka and you put the vanilla beans in there. Leave it for like 2 or 3 months and then you have vanilla extract. Yeah. But if we had a vanilla industry in Belize, you can sell like people wish to have vanilla beans. So the whole beautiful vanilla beans would probably be sold whole. And then the ones that crack and break and split a little bit, the ones that are not beautiful to the eye are then used in the vanilla extract.
And
But
what do you use in the extract? Like vodka?
yeah, or any
That's what I
strong
mean.
alcohol, but vodka has less flavor. You could
You know,
use
you
it
could do it
raw.
in rum too, but vanilla, I mean, vodka doesn't have the flavor. So I do it in
And I use
vodka.
vodka for pretty much all my tinctures.
Yeah. But you had asked earlier what my production is. Incredibly low. I have like hundreds of vanilla plants. But first of all, I've been basically talking about vanilla planifolia, but there are other vanilla species, which we have in Belize. And so I kind of just I have them, they're like my pet project. I have them so I can watch them. I do different things with different plants to see how they react to different situations in the hopes that long term I'll have a really good understanding of vanilla and we'll have that we'll be able to make a vanilla industry in Belize that's not just copied on what works in other countries, but it's more specific to us. For example, I would say in this slide and in the last slide are pictures of vanilla odorata. If you can see the leaf, it's long and thin and it's dark green. So
That's the leaf.
yeah, this is the vine and this right here is the leaf.
Okay.
But the leaf could be like 6 inches wide, but a vanilla planifolia leaf is usually, let's say if it's 2 inches wide, it's 6 inches long. But this could be like 6 inches long and 3/4 of an inch wide. It's a very long, narrow, pointy.
So from one
leaf.
plant, once a year, you would harvest how many beans about?
If I'm telling you what a textbook is saying, a vanilla planifolia could produce 70 to 100 beans a year. That's ideal situations, and it's also, I mean, it's nothing that you can't do. It's just not what my vision has been to do because I've been using my vanilla plants as a research project and as a research area and as a gene bank for all different vanillas that I brought from all over Belize to grow in my gene bank. So
Where else in the world is vanilla grown? It's pretty much a big industry.
well, all the aromatic vanillas are from this hemisphere.
Or from where?
This hemisphere.
Oh, okay.
So there are lots. Madagascar is the biggest vanilla producer,
Okay.
but the vanilla beans, the vanilla vines came from here,
Oh, really?
from this hemisphere. There are only 2 vanilla species that are like vanilla species that the USDA recognizes as vanilla. That's vanilla planifolia and vanilla tahitensis. So vanilla tahitensis is in Tahiti, but it didn't probably come from Tahiti originally. There are no wild vanilla tahitensis plants in Tahiti. In like 2007, I believe, this guy Pesach Lubinsky did the research and figured out. We're going a little fast with the slides. Maybe you should like go back one if possible. In fact, vanilla tahitensis is a natural hybrid. Its parent are planifolia, which is the species of commerce, and odorata, which was in the last picture. Those are its parents. Yeah, that right there. And scent-wise, if I was describing planifolia versus tahitensis, I would say tahitensis is more like light and flowery, and planifolia is more rich and warm.
What
let's say.
kind does Dr. Matthew have?
He has planifolia.
You say
Yeah.
that's the most common
Yeah,
here.
like worldwide, it's like 98% of commercial vanilla. Yeah. There's no reason. I mean, people eat odorata. People in southern Belize eat vanilla odorata, and the beans actually have an advantage because um, they can split on the vine, which, like I was telling you about planifolia, if it gets yellow by the tip, then it begins to split and then it's spoiled. It's not good. But odorata can split on the vine and it smells like fabulous vanilla. So you could be like, I see one somewhere, I smell one is somewhere, and then you can find it. But planifolia has to be cured. So I've never had enough odorata to be able to like experiment with curing. That's not where I am at all in like the research that I'm doing with vanilla. But
Are you documenting your research?
not as much as I should be. I know it's bad. I know. I mean, my daughter, you can't see her if you see the screen, but my daughter Zephyr is here. She's from she was small, I would hire her with a notebook to go around and count how many leaves were on each plant and write it down in the little notebook. I had to pay her. It was one of her first jobs.
And then
Yeah.
what happened?
Yeah. I mean,
we had them numbered with little tags.
Yeah.
So we'd have just a list and I'd go down the list counting like how big it was, if it had tipped, how many leaves it had, whatever. But then a lot of them lost their tags, a lot of them died. So you'd go down the list and you couldn't find a lot of the plants and you don't remember where some of them are either.
Yeah.
And it just got too complicated, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
'Cause
this is my pet project. So
Yeah.
it costs me money. It costs me time.
Right.
I love to do it, but there's a limit to like what I can do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because when we had the numbers, we also had records of where we had found them and how old it was.
We
and
still have
stuff.
those records.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's perfect. That's what
Yeah.
you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we at one time had, I think, 86 plants in the gene bank, and I think now we have less than 40, but we still know where they all came from. They all have their metal tags that we know where they came from, somewhere in Toledo.
Do you think of writing a book you could collaborate on? 'Cause you know what? Not many people do that. I don't know how many books there are about the topic for Central America or for Belize.
It'd be good to have a
Yeah.
book on vanilla.
Yeah, I would love to do that. Yeah.
You're such a good book writer. It would
Oh,
be good.
thanks.
Well, you got one here. so
Yeah.
Obviously, you can do it.
Yeah, yeah. And you know the cover of the book, that's Zephyr.
Oh, how old were you there, Zephyr?
I think
10?
6, 7, 7 maybe.
It was older than
You
that.
think? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Small.
That's such a great book. It's a
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm
Thank you.
looking.
good
through it.
resource.
Okay, the audience can't see. what
Can't
I'm
see it.
saying.
True. No, I don't have everything, but I have the plants, which to
Okay.
me is important. Yeah. This year I did collect a bunch of plants and send them to University of Florida, and they were tested. So now I know which species they're identified of. So I have at least 5 different species on my farm right here. And now we can go to the next picture. The next slide. Yes. There we go.
The orchid.
So this is a vanilla trigonocarpa. I'm not sure if that's actually how you pronounce it, but that's how it's spelled. Trigonocarpa. And this vanilla grows lots of places in southern Belize. It's very hard to transplant because it wilts easily, which is kind of unusual for a vanilla, and has very big flowers. But I waited years and years to find a flower for this vanilla.
Wow.
And then I saw it had 2 flowers. You can see by my thumb in this picture that I missed one. Like every single morning I'd like drive out to my farm, walk on this trail way off in the bush to where this flower was happening. And it wouldn't be open, and it wouldn't be open, and it wouldn't be open. And then I don't know, I think I missed a day and it flowered, but fortunately this has 2 flowers. I mean, I went to my farm like, I don't know, like 18 days almost in a row. Only open one morning. And there it was. And I mean, I was just ecstatic. The flower is enormous. That's why I put my hand in the picture so you could see like how big it is.
So when you take the fertilization process, you pull this up and fold it over and slap it.
this part of the flower, I don't know if this shows up,
Yeah.
but this part of the flower, you basically would rip the flower right along this line so that
Ooh.
you can see it inside. And then you're going to see that little flap that you have to open. It'll be super obvious when you rip it open. There's going to be like a little flap. You open the flap, you shut it. That's pollination.
Like how much do you? A little
You
flap on-
smash it. Like the flower will look ugly afterwards. It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of sad.
So it pollinates itself when you do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It doesn't
no,
need, yeah, it doesn't need a
different-
different one. Exactly,
okay.
exactly, exactly. Okay.
How do they reproduce in the wild?
Well, they don't have to. They grow by cuttings. So if you could
Oh,
imagine,
okay, yeah.
like it grows up a tree, and then the tree branch breaks off or the tree falls over, then it's actually done the tipping on its own. You
Mhm.
see? So it'll throw flowers then, and more sunlight is there, and it's planting itself from a cutting.
Uh-huh.
So it's well suited for its situation. And its point, the vanilla's point is that it wants to live, not that it wants to make beans for us. It doesn't probably care about us. So,
Maybe you could get a grant to and study what's out there and take pictures and come home and report about it.
yeah, 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 yeah.
There's a lot of bushy areas in Barranco.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So what I've been doing is bringing the plants back to my farm so I could kind of look at them all together at one time. But this plant grew on its own where it is. And I was blessed to be able to get in contact with like forgetting the name of it now. Anyhow, there's in orchid and vanilla circles, a rather famous gentleman in Costa Rica whose last name is Caramans, I believe is how you would pronounce it. And he positively ID'd it before me, which was really wonderful to hear, because this plant, it hasn't officially in big printed records been identified in Belize yet. And it's not a common plant. I mean, I can see how it wouldn't be common, because you can't even take a cutting from it and get it to grow. You have to really pamper this vanilla to make it grow. So obviously it's not going to survive in the wild if it's like a pampered, moisture loving, shade loving plant. It's not just going to hop over and grow somewhere else new on its own. All right. And then
Likes to be where it likes to be.
exactly. And there's lots of it around Barranco, and there's lots of it on, I told you I have the 5-acre piece of land 1 mile up the road. There's lots of it there. But when I got the 2-acre piece of land close to my house, not one.
Because
So,
it was more cleared.
no,
No?
because it was a farm 40 years earlier.
Oh, okay.
So no vanilla was there. Yeah. So even in 40 years, more didn't creep in from the bush, even though there's bush on all sides of that farm.
You can find it in the
Fascinating.
bush there. You found
Yeah.
it in the bush there before too.
Yeah. Yeah. But just not on that land. Yeah. All right. So in other interesting vanilla topics, which to me, this is unspeakably fascinating. And just a second, we'll let the traffic pass if that's making noise. Or not. So, there's another vanilla that grows in Belize called vanilla pompona, and it has a brilliant yellow flower. And I don't have it in this slideshow, but its leaves are similar to planifolia, but perhaps even wider. Like I would say, if you find a vanilla in the bush, a planifolia has 2 parallel sides and is an approximately 1-to-3 ratio, like 1 wide, 3 long, usually about 6 inches long, 2 to 2.5 inches wide, but it has 2 parallel sides. Whereas the pompona looks very much like the planifolia leaves, but it's more of a lemon shape, less parallel sides. But the pompona bears a very wonderful smelling, wonderful tasting vanilla bean, which is shorter than planifolia, wider than planifolia, more triangular in its cross section, and is not recognized as a vanilla that's edible by the USDA, unfortunately.
How come?
Um, how come?
What is it called? Vanilla what?
Pompona, Pompona. So if you could get me a cup of water, please. So I have been super blessed this year that I've been working with Copal Lodge, a very big, beautiful eco resort in Toledo, because they have a lot. Thanks, Seth.
How did the Zoom thing go?
We're still doing it. But Pompona grows easier than planifolia. It has 2 crops a year. Please don't lick me.
Ruby.
It tastes delicious. It should be a vanilla. As to why it's not like legally a vanilla, I think a couple things. One, I think some people do have Pompona mixed in with their planifolia on plantations, and it is just going as an exported crop, but as a Pompona plantation, that's rare. Because I think the industry just got it in its head that vanilla planifolia was the vanilla and just went with that. And vanilla farmers know it's good, so they've just been like letting a few Pompona plants go and not making any difference. And yet the paperwork said planifolia is a species of commerce. And then in 1958, the US got a plan that their USDA was going to make a list of all the plants that were official edible plants. And they just put vanilla planifolia and vanilla tahitensis on the list. And they didn't put vanilla Pompona on the list.
Know about it.
Yeah, and it's really hard because like you could, I mean, they look really similar. They're vanillas. So anyways, I've been working on a research document that Copal Lodge hired me to do with proving that Pompona has been, I mean, it was cultivated by the ancient Maya. It's in Guadeloupe, they grew mostly Pompona. So even if Guadeloupe was exporting to, well, they exported mainly to France because they were a French colony. So France was getting more Pompona than planifolia at a certain point. But I think just adequate records weren't kept and they didn't know. And then they just said planifolia is the official vanilla. So I would love to see that in the future, Pompona became legally. So that's what we've been working on this year with Copal. It's called grass, generally recognized as safe. To say that like people have been using Pompona for hundreds of years, just recognize that it's safe and let's go forward using it as a plant. And if they would, then we would be able to have vanilla Pompona cultivated in Belize, and it would almost be like we had an edge on the rest of the industry because vanilla tahitensis was grown predominantly in Tahiti for a very long time, and it's their signature vanilla. We could have our signature vanilla Pompona. If so, Copal Lodge is generously paving the way for anyone to follow in if they can get the USFDA to say it's a vanilla. It's that. Yeah. For us to export it, we have to have that grass certification. Yeah, because otherwise it's not a food. But see, the thing is, I mean, it's not like they're checking at the border for Pompona plants. So it is sold. You can find it online. You can find vanilla Pompona online for sale in the US. We here can eat it. Obviously, we can make our own vanilla industry and eat it, but we can't export it. We're a small country, so we probably want to export. Yeah. So I think that's the vanilla I'm most excited about right now.
If there would be establish an association of vanilla growers in Belize to develop some kind of strength in terms of getting these things approved.
I would say
There's not that many
Yeah.
people who are
Yeah.
doing it, but the ones who are doing it are pretty,
Yeah.
knowledgeable
yeah.
and could teach. And
Yeah,
I love the idea of it being a niche crop that
Yeah.
women could do,
Yeah.
you know, in their backyards.
yes.
You know, I worked for 20 years for a domestic violence shelter, and what you said is absolutely true. It's, you know, the economics of the situation is so important. Yeah,
We're still recording.
Okay.
okay.
Go away, Rupert. Um. Any other questions about vanilla before we close up?
One person submitted a question in the chat that said, what do you do with your beans, with your vanilla beans?
I eat them.
Oh.
I have a soap business, so if I get enough production that I have more vanilla, I would go on to making vanilla soap.
Oh, yeah, that would be nice. Vanilla neem soap.
So does the same sure that it tips in order for it to produce again, or does it only produce once?
I would say a vanilla vine. That's a really good question. A vanilla vine, when it tips, if you do more than let it tip, if you actually bring it down to the ground and put some branches on top of it, then you're basically letting it grow a new root. You're essentially not letting your plant wear out, because a vanilla plant, if you just had one plant, let's say it was at the base of an orange tree and it grew up and it was in the orange tree, you could expect that plant to live like 10 years and then it would be old maybe. But if you're continually bringing it down to where it has new parts where it's growing roots in the ground, you can keep that growing, I don't know how long, for a long time. You keep vanilla growing a long, long time.
That's what Dr. Matthew does.
Very interesting.
All right. Anything else on vanilla?
Probably think of some things later.
Yeah. Well, you have my email, so I could talk about vanilla with you indefinitely. So anybody could email me. Yeah, this is the last picture, the vanilla trigonocarpa, which I just am so happy about it. So I just put this picture in here.
It's the fat part that gets the
But you
pollination.
pollinate it. Yeah. Yeah, in there. Yes. Yes.
Beautiful.
All right. Just that. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Well,
Not.
Okay.
yeah, good tips. I like your gardening tips of plant if it doesn't grow, try something else, basically. Plant what grows easily. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much. And I will put Dawn's information back up here with her email address, dawndean@gmail.com, and her phone and WhatsApp number, 632-362. And she said that anybody, feel free to contact her with any questions, and, she'd be happy to answer them. So that will conclude our speaker meeting for today. And I thank all of you for attending in person and online. ProOrganic's next business meeting will be on 2 weeks on February 18th via Zoom from 3 to 5. If you have any questions, proorganicbeliefs@gmail.com, or go to the website and find out how to order pesticide-free produce, get more information about joining ProOrganic, see the other speaker meetings. It's a wealth of information there. And we're not sure yet who our March 4th speaker is going to be, but we will announce it as soon as we know. So thank you all. Let me see, there's one more chat. Yep, thank you so much from everybody. So thanks, Dawn.
Thank you.